I am unashamed. What about you?
Well, so we're back in the lair, the Unashamed lair, our new digs. I like our new digs, Dad. When you built this, because this was our staging area for hunting. Did you ever in your wildest imagination think that we would be sitting here around a table, sharing the Bible with America and beyond, and Canada and beyond?
Looking back at it, no, I never thought it would come to that. I actually just put it here because it's pretty good to come back from hunting. I mean, you have a bona fide commode.
There is a bathroom here, which is important for the Unashamed
come out
crew.
Of the woods where we
How
stay.
does a commode become bona fide?
Because
what's the
the
process?
unbona fide method is you squat out under an oak tree and
Sorry, I asked.
take a dump, wipe your tail with the leaves, the top leaves.
That's non-bona fide.
I said we need to get enough culture about us to have a commode where people can come in and take a leak and flush it, and it's a little more. What's the word?
Civilized.
A little more hygiene.
A little more cosmopolitan.
Friendly.
So, Dad, it's funny you said that. It just made me think of something. So I was in Utah.
100 years ago, this would have been out of the question.
Oh, we would be in a mansion. So I was up in Utah a couple weeks ago. I'm in the going through the national parks. They're beautiful, by the way. I mean, God made all this to look at. But the federal government has some restrooms and stuff there, which I appreciate. And I go in there, and there's just a urinal. It's kind of like one of those outhouses, because it just goes right into the ground, but it's nicer than that. It's got water, wash your hands. But there's signs up there. And the sign was like, don't poop on the floor. And it showed a person like a stick person squatting down on the floor, and it had a round thing. That's
why we have a commode here.
Well, right. And then there was another one that said, and don't stand on the toilet and poop. And then it gave here's what you do. There were 3 pictures there, and 2 had an X.
How to guide your posterior end to this.
So what I thought was like, okay, I mean that seemed obvious to me, but apparently you don't put a sign up there like that unless somebody has pooped on the floor and stood up on the toilet. And then so somebody told me in other countries they're not used to American, European models of commode. And so they're used to just squatting over a hole in the ground. So that was the problem is people that come in. So I just laughed because I thought, I thought it was pretty much standard commode 101 that you wouldn't get up on the commode and poop all over the seat or in the corner. I just found that funny when you said that.
It just reminded me of the crowd now that's in our streets that are throwing feces. Yeah. I guess their own. I don't know. Or some throwing their feces on law enforcement.
It's pretty sad.
So what do you call that? Is that
disgusting?
Peaceably assembling? No. Throwing your feces on law enforcement.
Did you see this on the news?
Yeah.
Oh. I haven't heard of that, but I would call that
ridiculous.
Yeah. I'm not sure. You should be jailed for that. That should be a crime.
So we also have a kitchen, Dad, just to complete your circle around the room. We stopped at the commode. We got a nice kitchen in here. We got our Black Rifle coffee going around. Then we have all our crew over here. So this is a great setup. I think
it is. I actually like it better than the last one.
And it is the staging area. So just outside, you go outside the lair and you take a left, and it goes right into our hunting property, which is now, close to 2,000 acres of hunting property that's here, which is amazing.
Yeah. And it was not really worth anything unless you're a hunter or a fisherman.
Right, because it floods. We've talked about that. It's flooded for 4 years.
Nobody would want it but us.
That's exactly right.
Yeah. But while you were in Utah, I went to Montana. We had a few days off here. Every year, my family, as in my wife and kids, we go somewhere. I think we've been doing it about 5 years, maybe. We went to Israel. Was that the last trip? No, that was the year before last.
Because you went to Utah one year.
Went to Utah.
You actually went to where I went.
Year.
Yeah.
Yeah, but we went to the Narrows, which is called Zion.
Yeah, Zion is there.
Amazing.
Yeah. We were in Moab, which was close to Canyonland.
And so, like last year, we went to Hilton Head, South Carolina, which was a little more touristy. Yeah. A lot of people, but it was good.
Did you play Hilton Head? Did you play the golf course?
No, we stayed there, but we didn't because it was always crowded.
Yeah.
And we played a few golf courses. No, we went to Montana, And that was the first thing I'm going to say is that it was the temperature was in the low 40s. The highs
that sounds nice
were
right now.
like 70 to 72.
That's our January.
Yeah.
Oh, I was cold. The first thing I did when I got there
It was buy a jacket.
build a fire. I mean, we're up in the mountain. And
Because our temperature right now in Louisiana is just Africa. That's what it says. You know, it doesn't even give you a number.
which what's funny, you're talking about playing golf. So my son, he said, I was looking at things to do. He said, do you realize we're staying in this neighborhood that has the number 3 golf course destination in the world? And I was like, really? I was like, well, let's go play. And he's like,
That's at Yellowstone?
no, this was in, we were in Big Sky. And I said, well, let's go play. And he's like, well, it's private. You know, you can't play. It's just a club. They don't allow visitors. I said,
Let's face it, Jase, some people just don't belong.
yeah. So I said, oh, well, we'll
They
go
took
down
one
there.
look at Jase and said, nah.
No, we didn't even ask, And so my son, he had an idea. He said, why don't I just call him and ask? I was like, call him up. So
Yeah.
what do you think that means? If your son says, I'm going to call him up and ask, I would think he's going to say, hey, we're from out of town.
No, but I know your son, so I'm sure there's going to be something
So
much more
we're all sitting in
crafty.
there in the living room. And so my son dials the number and he says, oh, yes, this is Andy McFarland. And everybody's looking around. I was like, Andy McFarland, who is that? It's like, I'm Jase Robertson's personal assistant. And so then I thought, he's kidding. He's actually not talking
Yeah,
to
he's
another
he's on
person.
hold, right.
Yeah. And I thought, oh, okay, this is funny. And he's like, we're staying up here. And we noticed that, you have one of the greatest golf courses, around. And Jase plays golf. And we were just wanting to know, is it possible if they can come play, for whatever monetary amount you see fit.
So Reed's
then
trying
we-
to use bigger words because
And we're laughing, and so he hangs up. I was like, ha ha, and he's like, we're in. I was like, what? That was real? So we go play this course.
I'm
And-
trying to figure out if that was a Christian thing to do. I don't know. What do you think?
Well,
I don't
It
know.
was
I
marginal,
mean,
maybe,
God.
but
Well, here's
he was
what.
just playing a role. That's all he was.
Well, here's
doing.
what's funny is like an hour later, they call him back on his phone, but he just answers it. Like, hey. And they're like, we're looking for Andy McFarland. And he's
I'm
like,
glad he-
oh, well then.
Andy,
yeah. Then he was like, well, actually, I'm Reed. I'm Jase's son. Andy was using my phone. So, which
is technically true.
And they were like, oh, okay. Well, and so they discussed details.
That's funny.
But Jack Nicholas.
By the way, what did they clip you for to play around the golf in Big Sky, Montana?
Private club.
it wasn't cheap. However, it
What's
wasn't.
money to men like us?
It
Jase?
wasn't as much as I thought, because I did get a little nervous because nobody said anything about money. And he's like, all right, we'll come over here and fix you up. And I was like, well, what if he says $5,000? I was just prepared.
You don't build beautiful golf
Yeah.
courses in the middle of nowhere unless you got a pretty good fee coming toward the public.
So it was about $250 a head.
Which for nice golf courses is not bad at all.
I mean, some
some people don't play golf think, are you crazy?
This is all news to me. I didn't know. I was just wondering.
Yeah.
I mean, that's not cheap.
$250 a head.
But since the thing was incredible,
But
I'm like,
you
okay.
were telling me how beautiful it was.
Oh, it's unbelievable. I mean,
Nicholas, it was a Nicholas design.
yeah. No, it was hard. It was the best. I had the most fun shooting 96. For you non-golfers, that's the lower the score, the better. And I beat my two sons because
If the old mountain men could look back, the ones that first ran up on Montana got to looking around like, whoa, smoke coming out of there and pools of acid and hot spring.
that was in Yellowstone.
If they had seen, but I'm just saying,
Yeah,
if they had
I get
seen
you.
what was coming, I wonder what they'd
You
have
think
thought.
they would have ever thought there'd have been people out there playing golf and just,
I'm
riding
just
around on an
saying.
ATV?
I'm just saying.
Yeah,
It was amazing.
It was a lot different when they were there.
I mean, this place, it was swanky, and look, they're only open 3 months a year because of the weather.
Oh,
You know, most people go here to ski.
Yeah, I got you.
And so that's why they're like, no. Because the members, they only have so much time to play.
Right, I got
They fit us in. And the elevation there affects the ball. So it's not like I played that bad, but you're hitting incredible distances.
Well,
you don't know how far you are.
Anytime you're playing courses you never played before with clubs that aren't your clubs, it's a big disadvantage. I mean,
But it's
fun to just experience it.
Oh, the experience. And for humans to say, watch this, we're going to go up top of the
So
mountain.
where is it compared to Pebble? Because you've always said Pebble was your
mean, I had St. Andrews and Pebble 1 and 2. I would put this at number 3.
Yeah,
as far as just most impressive things I've seen a human do when it comes to
And you
golf.
hadn't played Augusta, so if you ever did that.
Yeah, I hadn't played there. I've been there, which it's awesome. But anyway, basically just to tell you a little bit about our trip, because you brought up some of these government regulations. I think the thing that made me the most concerned is because my crew, they like to go hiking, which for me, I mean, I go on these trips because I want to be intentional about my family. I want to have some intentional time.
Because if it were up to Jase, you wouldn't necessarily travel anywhere. But
Well, right.
you
I
want to
like-
do it for them.
I don't like to travel.
Right.
I travel all the time, and I sure don't want to just do it for the heck of it.
Right.
And because they like to hike. Well, when I hike, I'm fixed to go shoot something. Or I'm
There's a
scouting
purpose to your-
of something. I'm hiking. Yeah, I'll walk miles because I'm looking for the ducks. When I find them, I run back and say, we're going to get them tomorrow. But just to say, let's just get up and go walk 7 miles, half of it straight up a cliff. Why would I want to do that on purpose? And so what they say is, well, you got to have bear spray. So I'm like, I'm out there. I went
Spray it on you or the bear.
Well, I'm getting there. So,
this
so
an
one
attraction?
of the other days we go fly fishing because I'd never been fly fishing.
Yeah.
And
Which is hard.
it's the hardest way to catch a fish ever. I didn't catch but one, and Missy went with me, and she was actually better at it than me as far as casting because she didn't have
Because you had
hundreds of thousands of casts to get over. I kept, you
don't cast it that way.
Yeah, it's a
right.
different kind of system here, and I didn't catch but one, but it was like a 18-inch brown trout, which is from what I understand, one of the hardest pulling fish there is.
Was it
that
pretty
they
good
catch.
to bring
Oh,
him
it
in?
took me 20 minutes to get him in.
Wow.
Of course, I sent a picture to Jay because I was all proud of it, and he sent back and said, "Don't eat it."
Yeah, it's.
So I don't know. I kind of took this.
I think the flesh on them is full of little bones. I mean, it's.
But
Maybe we don't know how to cook them.
Well, I grabbed the trout, going to take a picture. No, don't take him out of the water. I was like, what? Well, it's just people get upset if you take him out of the water. I was like, look, let me explain something to you. Here's my order. I'm gonna turn the trout back, but we have God, humans, animals. He was looking at me.
This was like your
said, I'm
guide
gonna
or
pick
whatever.
him up and take a picture, and then I'm gonna let him go.
And
He said, oh no,
and he'll
people-
be fine.
So people get upset about that. I said, well, that's idiotic. So anyway, they need to know the order. So on the hiking, we, they said, well, here's the bear spray. So I asked that guy when I was fishing, I was like, does this bear spray actually work? Because I said, how many bears have you seen? He said, hundreds. I said, oh, really? He said, well, when I used to guide elk hunting, I'd carry a pistol. And I was like, no, you're my kind of man. He's like, well, no, I didn't care it for the bears. He said, I carried that for me. And I was, because it's kind of what you said. He's like, if I get way too close, because they don't necessarily kill you quick.
Yeah.
And I was like, well, I think I'd empty the pistol out. He said, it ain't going. Hey, you run up on the right grizz, it's over. I said, well, what's the deal with the bear spray? And he's like, well, it just makes you feel better. These people come in from all over the world, and it's an option. He said, but and it has worked, like, because it'll spray up to about 20 feet away. He said, but if the bear wants to dismember you, that spray ain't gonna stop it. Neither is a pistol. So
it's sort of like a bug spray down here. Let's take a quick break. So one of the things we know about 2020, out of a lot of, there's been a lot of stuff going on in 2020, obviously.
I thought you were talking about that news show.
Oh, no. Good night, Jase.
Right.
You don't even watch the news.
No, I know.
The year 2020, we've seen a lot of stuff. And one thing it's reminded us of is there is a need, I would say, Dad, for self-reliance in 2020. Because, you know, when you're in a big city, people are just sitting around waiting for the police to show up for every little thing that happens because people aren't very self-reliant.
It keeps coming up. Quiet life, mind your own business, work hard, your daily life will win the respect of outsiders so that you won't have to be dependent on anybody.
Yeah.
Literally. No one but God. God and God alone.
That's right. So our audience understands about self-reliance. That's why ammo sales are up, and that's why gun sales are up, because people are like, look, we ultimately got to take care of ourselves. This next product we're talking about is something that's going to aid you in that, especially if you're just, maybe you purchased a handgun for the first time. I've heard a lot of people say that in cities. They'd never had a gun before, and now they're saying we better get a gun. So this is iTarget Pro. Which basically it's an app on your phone, and you put a bullet, in your gun it's a laser.
It shoots a laser. Don't shoot an actual.
Exactly. So you're not actually shooting the bullet, but you shoot it at your phone, but it's going to tell you where you're hitting it on the target. So it's a great way to be able to get your muscle memory right, to be able to practice shooting without having to go to a gun range or something like that. So, and we want safe gun ownership for sure. That's important for all of us.
Shooting a gun is technique anyway.
Right.
We had a Navy SEAL train us how to shoot a pistol. We spent half the day. We never actually discharged a live round for hours.
Right.
We were just all technique, and you would dry fire.
Yeah.
So it's the same concept.
It's the same concept. So if you will go to itargetpro.com, right now you can get 10% off plus free shipping if you use the offer code PHIL. That's at itargetpro.com. Use the offer code PHIL, save you some money, and practice on your shooting. Yeah, I'd say that was in the same category as a bug spray in the blind during teal season. It ain't really working. I mean, we bring it anyway, but it ain't keeping it off.
Well, the most thing they're upset about, this is why I wanted to tell you, is the government. You got to watch them. Somebody in their government system decided, we used to have wolves. Let's bring them back. And everybody I talked to was highly upset about it because the number one economy mover in Montana is ranches.
Yeah.
Tourism is number two. And they're like, why bring in a bunch of wolves to attack our herd?
Yeah.
And attack us, because now you have the bears, which, okay, we'll deal with it. And now we have wolves, and they were so upset. So I just thought to myself, why would we do that? There's some things that humans got rid of that's a good thing.
Yep.
And I think wolves, that's one of them. I mean, what do y'all think?
And there still are wolves. They're just where people aren't. Because you go up in Alaska, especially North, there's still wolves on the planet.
Yeah,
it's
I'm
just
not saying
they're
eradicate the
species.
I mean, people do the same thing with dinosaurs. They make the moves. Oh, wouldn't it be great, if all the dinosaurs were back? No.
Because we'd be toast.
Yeah. There would be people dying every other minute.
You don't want to live with a T-Rex running
You don't want that.
That's
you
bad.
idiot. That's why we got rid of them. They said, well, we hadn't figured it out. I'm sure some humans had something to do with it.
Either that or the Almighty.
Yeah.
So you had a good time.
I had a good time. It was, there was a couple things that happened. It was my 30th year anniversary.
Yeah.
Which when you're with your kids and they're not really, even though Reed is married now, they're not really old enough, I guess, they're like, yeah, happy anniversary. That's about it. And which is fine, so it was kind of weird being on the trip. And we had something really comical happen that we never told our kids because I didn't know how to explain this. I went in there. This place we were staying was fancy smancy. And we had known the woman who owned the house, and she's just like, hey, nobody's going to be there, you know. And so, I mean, I got there and I was like, whoa. I mean, this was fancy smancy. So I went in there and plopped on the bed, you know. I mean, Missy and I were in there, but I just plopped it, and well, the whole bed just went, whoa. I broke the bed. But so that we got to tickle.
You're jumping on the bed. You're 51 years old.
I didn't really jump on it. I just plopped down on it. And so then I was like, boy, the kids, they're going to think this is funny. Missy's like, well, you can't tell them. I was like, what do you mean? She's like, okay, it's our 30th year anniversary, and you're going to walk out of this room and say, well, we broke the bed. That's not going to work.
Which that's exactly what I would have done.
So we never said a word. But it was bad because the whole week we were there, no matter where you got on the bed,
you wound up in the middle.
Well,
that sounds like Miss Kay. That's what you always say about Mom.
I had one the same way, and finally I looked up under it, and it had collapsed up under it, and I got Red down there to weld me a strut across there and bring it up to where we're fairly level now.
So now you're not flowing to the middle.
No matter where you started, you ended up right down there in the V.
Well, what's weird, as affectionate as my wife and I are, I mean, we're still head over heels in love 30 years later. I mean, but once we go to sleep, neither one of us want to be touched. You know, once the festivities are over. That's right. That's it. Don't touch me. And
you wonder why, Al, I said that your younger brother always, he never runs out of stories.
He does
wait
not.
A minute. I mean, what I'm saying is, though, if you both wind up at
I'm trying to work in the golf course, the grizzly bears.
I was telling you about my trip.
Down. You add it all up, not much was going on up in there. You know what I'm saying?
Well, he broke a bed.
I broke a bed.
He broke a bed
on my 30th year anniversary.
Just by jumping on it or sitting on it.
Yeah.
All right, so Dad, I want to hear so during our little break we had, so you were doing media for Jesus Politics, which has released now since we took the break.
I sat there in one spot. Some of it would be on video, and some of it would just be audio, telephone. But I did about 25 of them in about a 10-day period, talking to various people nationwide about the book Jesus Politics. You know, most of them were intrigued. They said both those topics are supposed to be taboo.
That's right. Jase said that a few weeks ago. That's right.
Jesus,
and you put it in both the time.
You know, you can't discuss religion and politics, and said that you put them both together in one book. I'm like, you know, just trying to get people to love God and love one another. I said, it's like pulling teeth. But anyway,
the good news was
all I was doing was doing interviews on the book, which is it's quite the hassle unless if you got 4, 5, 6, 7 in one day.
Yeah, it's quite a few.
At 8 o'clock in the morning to about 4:35 that evening.
Yeah,
and you're on a schedule.
We've all released books, so we all know what that's like. Yep. But what was interesting was, one, you didn't have to go to New York, which was a major plus for you because of coronavirus. So we did everything from the house or from town.
But you know, these people, I mean, I just went to Montana. I flew on an airplane. The planes were packed.
Yep.
Where I was at, Montana, packed. Now, everybody had masks on. Pretty much, I'd say 90%.
Mm-hmm.
But
same
life
at the beach.
is going on. I mean, a lot of people watching the news or whatever thinking we've all dug a hole somewhere.
Yeah,
I mean, there was not one open seat on any plane that I got on.
Well, just to give you an example, we've the Robertson. What shall we call them? The three of us and Willie, and even Jep down there in Austin, but just this little group up here in the last 10 days, 2 weeks, we've baptized like 70-something people. And they
this
come.
Month, that's right.
They're coming from all over the United States.
Some of them are you guys on Unashamed.
Sure.
Yeah.
So we're seeing a movement of sorts, call it what you will. We're pointing people to Jesus, saying, eternal health care, it's free. So and people are coming to be baptized, and then you run into the government edict that says you can't get within 6 foot of a person. Well, they've driven from
I think that's just
flown.
A suggestion.
They've driven and flown from all over the United States, and they want us to baptize them, and we're like, we're more than happy to do it. Jesus said, go make disciples, baptize them. We're like, okay. So we got to figure out how to get some kind of rope and pulley system, because we got to stay within 6 feet of them. Somehow or another, snatch them down under the water with a rope and then draw them back up with some kind of.
That doesn't sound.
Or you just walk up and let them clasp. They hold their nose and let them clasp your hand, and you bury them and you raise them up.
Are you being sarcastic?
I'm just saying, what do? Do you go with the government edict? Jesus didn't say go make disciples and baptize them unless there's a pandemic. Then you all bets are off.
Yeah,
Wow.
check with your local authorities.
Jase is right. Most governors have been. Here's our suggestion. There have been some that have been a lot more forceful than others in certain states. But in our state, our governor basically has said, here's what I suggest. But when it comes to churches, you're exempt from, a lot of the other rules that are out there, and you do the right thing. So he's basically left up to churches and pastors, which, I appreciate him doing
we
that.
do it as
Most
I didn't know that. That's
yeah,
good.
yeah.
as a
Governor Edwards has done well.
consideration for other people. But, we're not the type of people who are saying, oh, yeah, we believe in an all-powerful God who's, omnipotent and controls the atoms and molecules.
Will raise us from the dead.
Raise us from the dead. He's eternal. And, but let me get my mask on so because I don't want to get sick while I'm sitting in here singing about him. Well, that just seems kind of silly to say.
It is.
However, so I just look at it like it's something nice
Right.
to do for your fellow man.
Yeah,
woman.
to look after the people that are most at risk. Let's take another break. So we've been talking about some of the dangers of 2020, and obviously people have bought guns, they bought ammo, they've bought ways to protect themselves. But one of the things we've noticed about our current era that we live in, boys, is that a camera is an important security item to have around your house. If you have a gate, if you have property lines, a camera is a good thing to have.
Well, you basically, we put our trust in God, and then you have the next level, which is animals, guns, and cameras.
That's right.
Because people are terrified of being caught on camera.
Because then you put it out there on the internet. Who is this guy?
To protect is to shield, to guard, to defend.
Yep.
Love always protects.
That's right.
You love your family. You hear glass breaking. There's somebody coming in your window. Should have opted for a Bible study.
Yeah, that's always the best option. But if they're not going to, Simply Safe is one of our sponsors, and so we want you to check these guys out. They got everything you need to protect your home. You get sensors, you get cameras, you get professional monitoring. You can set it up yourself in under an hour. You just peel and stick the sensors where you need them. All this starts for $15 a month, which is great news, a great price. Try simplysafe.com/unashamed. You get free shipping and 60-day free risk-free trial. So simplysafe.com/unashamed. Check these guys out. For the book, I want to let the audience know, one is thank you, because you guys have helped keep Dad at the right around the top on the religious books section, and then also in and out of the top 10 on the all books, which is great. And Unashamed Nation is a big part of that. A lot of you have sent me emails about it. Where can we still get it? There's still some, the last time I checked, there's still some signed copies available on Premium Collectibles /Jesus Politics. And I'll get Cole to put that up. Premium Collectibles /Jesus Politics. So you want to get a signed copy from there as long as they last. And then another thing that they asked me to ask you guys to do was write a review for the book on Amazon, because this helps us stay at the top of the list. And I wanted to read a couple of those, and some of them may be podcast listeners. One is Ryan Shoemaker. This was on Amazon, and he said, excellently written book that is worth a read for all Americans, hard-hitting with the need to return our government to God, but also teaches us to forgive the lawless ones who show no forgiveness to whom they disagree.
That's right.
I thought that's a pretty good take, because that's exactly right. It was very much a book about loving your fellow man.
He got the gist of it.
He did. This was McQuinn on Amazon. New insights, encouragement, truth, and he's got that in all caps, humor, clear and easy to read. I highly recommend reading and sharing this with friends and relatives. So that was just a couple of them. We'd love for you guys to go on Amazon if you've read the book. And look, if you didn't like it, be honest. You can say that. It's okay. But we'd love for you to review it and let folks know what it was about. But that was what Dad was doing. He was working. How many books have you signed in book plates? A lot, huh?
More than I want to bring up.
Which is true. So one last thing before we get to, we're eventually going to get into John 10 today, but I did want to say, Jase doesn't even realize this probably. This is another momentous podcast. Are you aware of why?
1:30?
No. Well, we are 1:30. That was good. Oh, you must have saw it on my notes.
Yeah.
No, it is 1:30, which is momentous, but no, it's bigger than that.
Well, 6 to 7. What's the significance of 1:30?
We officially changed the name of Unashamed.
Well, why do y'all keep doing this stuff?
Well, it's just because these are big changes. Things change.
So we have a new name?
We have a new name.
All right. What is it?
It is Unashamed with Phil and Jase Robertson. And so our logo, which people are seeing, which I didn't make the names, but at least I did make the picture. They have me with a beard on the picture. So there's our picture. There's our new picture. That's our new podcast
what
name.
Stage are you going to get your name?
Well, I don't know. I guess I'm
list?
still earning my stripes. Maybe I'll, if we get Phil, Jase, and Al, that was a lot of names to put on.
By the way,
I'm just the quarterback here.
Who is we and who is they? Because they decided that'd be the name, and we. Who's we and they?
And you're just now finding out about it?
Me and you are not we or they.
I know it. That's what scares me.
I'm
not really scared about it. I just
I'll tell you the they is Blaze TV, who is our network that provides the podcast. And so they decided that they wanted both you guys' name on the title. So that's
I'm glad it took them 100
and didn't want your name there.
Well, they asked me, and I said I would just as soon not, because Zach's going to be filling in for me. So I'm just kind of I'm like the quarterback that sometimes I need a rest. The guy steps in. So this is more about you two guys. So that was the idea.
What are we, linemen? They play every
so
snap.
So how does that make
maybe
you
a
feel?
lineman? Maybe.
How does that make you feel, Jase? You made the cut.
Kind of weird that we did 130 episodes before somebody said, "Hey, Bob, what? Oh, Jase is there on every episode."
But you said it. You said, I just was a guest. I showed up one time and I never left. Well, finally they're like, okay, I guess he's part of the regular.
They didn't
show.
have to do that. I'm sure somebody made an executive decision. But look, what I wanted to talk about today was, because I didn't bring up this. I was upset about these wolves being released. I'm upset about that.
He can't get off the wolves.
They kind of wanted it modern day to see what varmints were there, whatever their God made them, the wolves, the foxes, the coyotes. There's a lot of four-legged bobcats, all kind of creatures run around. Right. They trimmed the wolf population down so much that they said, we don't want to lose a particular species. They're not looking at it from a godly perspective, but they said,
because they said they used to be here.
They got the buffalo down to, you saw some buffalo, right?
I saw the herd, about 30.
Well, what I'm saying is at one time there was millions, and they pretty well whacked and stacked them till it was pathetic.
Yep.
They shot way too many of them.
Yep.
Yeah, but Phil,
why, I don't know. And they got rid of the wolves while they were
I agree with you on the buffalo.
So, so there are people who are saying, let's bring it back to at least kind of the way it was back when the old mountain men came across there and said, boy, these
So
wolves
you kind of like the idea. I mean, just...
Well, here's the problem.
I'm not knocking it.
Yeah, I got
Here's the problem.
But for the ranchers who are there,
you understand,
they would say, Phil, you'd probably change your mind if you were a rancher and were raising cattle. I see both sides of it. So,
well, see, our guide, we went to Yellowstone. We saw, basically, my take on Yellowstone is this whole thing's fixed to blow. I mean, there's stuff bubbling out of the ground. Yeah, if you ever want to come
don't say that like fiction too, because they've got it figured out that at some point it will. And
well, Virgil, he was our 79-year-old tour guide for Yellowstone. He said they say this thing was supposed to erupt last week. I said, well, Virg, he said they were wrong.
Even in Louisiana, we would be cutting it thin from the ash and all of the ramifications if it did explode. I saw a deal there, Smithsonian Channel.
We talked about it.
It'll reach all the way down to Louisiana, everything west of the Mississippi.
Well, you know what old Verge said? He said, I read a book one time that said that wasn't the way it was going to end. I said, what book was that? He said, the Bible. I said, well, it does say there's going to be a big fire.
Big fire.
Maybe that's to be the start of it, you know? And he said, well, God's going to set it, not, over here in Yellowstone.
Do you think about, though?
Rage is a good point.
Yeah.
He does, because you think about the geothermic stuff that's going on with this ball that we're floating around on and flying around on. I mean, there is some massive stuff going on inside of this ball. I mean, there is some fireball.
But old Verge said he's a rancher, and on the side, he likes to meet people. And he reminded me of you. Whatever he thought, he said it, which was kind of funny, yet disturbing, yet interesting. But he was a believer, and I mean, he was a really nice guy. If you ever go to Montana, in Big Sky, look for everybody. He said, everybody knows who I am. Virgil's his name, but he takes people to Yellowstone. But he was upset over these wolves, and he convinced me. He's like, the reason we don't have the wolves, we relocate them. We relocated them, or we didn't just shoot them. Yeah. He said, and that's for a reason. He said, when you go to Yellowstone now, well, you don't see much wild game. He said, before the wolves, I saw it everywhere. But now you forced everything else to go out in the open, because Yellowstone, there's a lot of woods. Right. He's like, well, they got the heck out of there, because there's packs of wolves roaming for every kind of critter.
He has a point.
Because nobody's hunting them. Right. He's like, I wouldn't have minded if you brought them back, if you'll just don't let them get out of hand. Or if you're, no, they just turn them loose and say, good luck. He said, now nobody go out the woods. None of the animals will. And so the wolves, now when you go on a 10-hour deal, we saw one herd of buffalo, about 30, and one herd of elk, about 10. Mm-hmm. I was over 10 hours riding around. I was like, where's all the animals? Yeah. He's like, you ain't gonna see no animals over here. He said they're on the other side now, where they can look out there 5 miles and see a pack of wolves coming.
So from our perspective, the wolves are just coyotes on steroids. I mean, because that's the way coyotes are here. They ain't really good for anything except killing everything that we want to eat.
But it made me think
marauders.
It made me think of this story, in John 10, when Jesus, he said, I tell you the truth, the man who does not enter the sheep pen by the gate, but climbs in by some other way, is a thief and a robber. And so you're like, what is he talking about? The man who enters by the gate is the shepherd of his sheep. The watchman opens the gate for him, and the sheep listen to his voice. He calls his own sheep by name and leads them out. When he has brought out all his own, he goes on ahead of them, and his sheep follow him because they know his voice. But they will never follow a stranger. In fact, they will run away from him because they do not recognize a stranger's voice. Then it says Jesus used this figure of speech, but they didn't understand what he was telling them.
Hang on, Jess. Let's take a break and then finish your point. I heard this the other day on another ad on the radio, Jase. You've heard this before. This woman named Deborah said, I couldn't believe we were being evicted from our home that we did not sell. We've read these ads a lot, but then I saw a picture of this poor woman, and I thought, man, it just made it even more real to me to realize what a terrible thing to happen.
When you have panic and chaos, then people with mischief on their mind come in and try to invent ways of doing evil, like steal your title off the internet or your identity or what, in this case, they'll steal your house, Phil.
Yeah, and there's been several of them. Basically, it's identity theft that's done on the internet for your home title. And so we got a company that's out there to protect from cyber thieves. We've been talking about protecting our sheep from thieves. This is a good way to protect it. HomeTitleLock.com is this company. You go there, you register, make sure you're not already a victim. If you use the code PHIL, you get 30 days of protection. So that's HomeTitleLock.com. Use the code PHIL. Check it out.
Which you're thinking, why is Jesus, most people who have a little bit of knowledge get it. Jesus is our shepherd. We're sheep. And, you know, when you think about sheep, now even in Montana, they got these mountain sheep, the ram, what are they called? Sheep ram. I mean, they got the horns.
Yeah,
Oh,
the
yeah.
rams.
You know, they'll ram each other. You can hear it over a mile off,
Right.
which is incredible. But, you know, when you think about sheep, their only defense, because they're a meek animal, is just to stick together. They just form a pack. And basically, they're real obedient animals. That's why I think Jesus was using
They're very timid.
the analogy. But my point about the wolf, he goes on to say in verse 7, therefore Jesus said again, I tell you the truth, I am the gate for the sheep. All who ever came before me were thieves and robbers, but the sheep didn't listen to him. I am the gate, which I love this because his nickname is I am.
Right.
And here he goes again. And then he says, he will come in and go out and find pasture. The thief comes only to steal and kill and destroy. I have come that they may have life and have it to the full, which is a much quoted verse in our society for
It's a
years.
big one,
If you
yeah.
thought that was some kind of poem, you know, it's actually John 10:10.
10:10.
Then he says, I am again the good shepherd. The good shepherd lays down his life for the sheep, which is the difference in Jesus and all other religious leaders. I mean, Jesus, he laid down his life for us. He created us, then laid down his life for us. The hired hand is not the shepherd who owns the sheep. So when he sees, the wolf coming, positive or negative? I think this is negative.
It is.
When he sees the wolf coming, he abandons the sheep and runs away. Then the wolf attacks the flock and scatters it. The man runs away because he is a hired hand and cares nothing for the sheep. I mean, there's a lot to get into here, but I just thought to myself, wolves are bad. Now, I don't want to eradicate them like you said, but I think there's a reason that they were relocated. And the humans that were making their living from ranching were putting that as a factor.
Wolves
and I
are
think it
kinda-
was a good thing.
Wolves, when out of control, one of the guys sent us a note and said, my question is about hunting and killing varmints. On my deer lease, we have pigs out the wazoo, and they tear up food plots, eat all our corn, destroy the ground and equipment. I've always been raised to eat what you kill, so I have a tough time just whacking and stacking the pigs by the hundreds. But I know y'all a godly man. Y'all have beaver issues. We talk about put a bullet in the head, and y'all do what needs to be done. So that being said, I know just going and killing something, in this case, literally, according to all the wildlife people in the nation, this infestation of wild hogs.
Yeah.
They're moving. They just keep moving, and it's a phenomenon like they've never seen. And they are, for lack of a better way to describe them, a very invasive species.
I mean, I think
They carry a lot of diseases,
Yeah.
and they do
They
a
decimate
lot of
crops.
tearing up.
I mean, I would say to that,
There's too many wild
I'm going to
hogs.
go back to the order I said. If you have your order, which I get from Romans 1, you have God, people, and then animals in that order. And you say, well, where are you getting that? It says, they suppress God, even though they knew, and worshiped and served created things rather than the creator.
Yep.
And then it says that they bow down.
Images
worship.
made to look like birds, animals, and reptiles.
That's right.
And man.
Yeah. So they elevated the animal world.
They have.
Which, look, even in our society today, there's some people that love their dog more than they do any other human. That's just a fact. If you hadn't met these people, look out.
Yep.
But because they're treating this, look, I like my dogs, love them, but I realize they're a dog and we're humans. If someone comes to attack my family, I'm putting the dogs out as the first line of defense, and I would hate it. But you know what? They're the last at the line.
Love always protects.
Yeah, that's right. So that's what I would say. I mean, I try to use judgment. I mean, because I get what the guy's saying. You just don't want to. I'm not a go out there and kill something because I can.
Just for the sake of killing.
Yeah, I have no
He can
interest
contact
in
the wildlife officials he's from Texas in the great state of Texas. He needs to contact the biologists there and say, what about all these hogs? It
That's
seems
what I
like
think,
that.
yeah.
What I need to do about them? Is it okay to whack them and stack them? Because I hate to let them just fall where they are, and that's it. But use one of Clint Eastwood's lines. I mean, you know, the bobcats and the coyotes, they need to eat too, and so do the buzzards.
Well, right.
So
everybody's going to have a feast. Let's take one last break. We talked about that even on the property, that this is all part of the ecosystem. So sometimes when something becomes so invasive that then it's destroying other things, then those need to be thinned down. And we know that from deer hunting and everything else. For things to be healthy, if you have too many, then they get diseased.
you
and
definitely have to
They're going to
render-
die off eventually.
Oh, yeah.
You know, but I don't like it. When I was in Montana up there, you know, the deer acted tame. I don't like that.
Yeah.
I like for them to keep their wildness. When I walk up, I want them to run.
Yep.
You know, they do down here because people shoot them. Even if you slow down your car, if you see deer, they know.
Yeah. They tell the tone with your mud grips. Ooh, they're gone.
Run.
They just run.
Because the next thing that happens,
He's slowing down. The redneck's
woo.
slowing down. Get out of here.
Yeah. Yeah.
They've been conditioned to know, right?
Oh, yeah.
But Jase is right. You go in some of these other places and you stop and they look up at you. They're chewing, you know. I mean, they're, you know, from me to you. And they're looking, you know, and they go back to eating because they've had the car stuff and everybody's taking the pictures. Oh, I can't believe it.
Stevenson lives in Colorado, Dan's dad, and he's taken several pictures on his little back room, little concrete covered thing.
Yeah.
He's looking through the plate glass window, taking a picture of mountain lions, sometimes two of them walking within 10 feet of where he's seated watching television. They just walk by, mountain lions.
Wow.
Just walk on by him. He's like, whoa.
Yeah, because
He has pictures of them.
Yeah.
Just right there next to his house, his house.
So you think it's just because they built into their area, or they've just gotten comfortable enough?
Subdivision reached out in there.
That's right.
They know man's not going to harm them.
Right.
So they come down in there to feed or whatever a mountain lion does. But Stevenson has taken several pictures of them within 10 feet of where he is, just a plate glass window there, and they walk by.
Wow.
I like how Jesus makes an analogy, though, of a real life, because we get that. We're sitting there because we're outdoors people. I mean, I was just in the outdoors in Montana, and, you know, when I started telling you all my stories, it was all about the outdoors because that's what I like.
Right.
But Jesus was using that figure of speech, what it said. They wasn't getting it, but I get it. You know, what separates Jesus from other, would you want to say religious leaders or just leaders? I mean, he basically said they're thieves, they're robbers, because he's representing people as sheep, which we are, which I think it's an awesome illustration, because what do sheep do? They're prone to panic. Any kind of sense of that, they panic.
They scare easily.
They scare easily. And they basically need a shepherd. They need a direction.
They have to be protected.
Yeah.
Yeah. And so
that's what the rancher's talking about up there.
Well, what I find interesting is when you think of the thief and the robber, you think of people who are trying to lead people down a road of destruction or, you know, bad.
Well, later in the New Testament, they're
a
called
big old cow has no chance with a pack of
because
wolves.
he's just standing there.
Yeah.
So it's like a wolf in sheep's clothing. You know, it's kind of the picture you get. Like they're sneaking into the ranks.
Yeah. But then he brings up the hired hand, which you would think, well, that's legitimate. And he's like, yeah, but the first sign of trouble, he gone.
That's right.
And then he makes the point to where they all have one thing in common: the thief, the robber, and even the hired hand. Because I always think about preachers, you know, the hired hand. They have one thing in common: they don't care about the sheep.
Yeah.
and I'm not saying everyone's like that, but he made a point that outside of Jesus himself, if you're putting your faith and trust in these people, you're going to be disappointed because people will get what they can get out of you. They'll send you down a path of destruction, and they'll give the appearance that they really care. And you'll look up and say, no, he was just a human. And that's the nature of humanity. But that's why Jesus was saying, got some red letters here. He didn't say that, but if you want to know what I'm like, you can take this as assurance. Here's your true leader.
Right.
So,
well, you're right. I mean, look, I've been a preacher most of my life, and it's always upset me to see a person who was in a shepherding role as a pastor or whatever, and that really didn't care about sheep, but cared about himself or cared about something else. And I mean, that's to someone who does care about sheep. It's, it's very insulting. And it's also, it shows you why there's so many dangers mentioned in the Bible about them. And this comes from what Jesus said in this text. Because ultimately, Satan is the thief. One of the things I liked about John 10:10 is it paints a clear picture of the two sides you're looking at. You got Jesus, who comes to give you abundant life if you just trust in him. And then you got the thief life, whatever form of evil that takes, whether it's a wolf in sheep's clothing, whatever. And his purpose here is to hurt you and destroy you, which is exactly what the evil one is out to do for anybody. That's what he wants to do. It's just why he's done so much of that in our culture. So I think John 10 is a great. Jesus is great at doing exactly what we've been talking about, and that is he looks at something in real life, and then he explains it. What's interesting is just like we studied everything else we have into John 9 or up to John 9, the people don't always get it. Have you realized that, Jase, how much they missed it? I mean, because and maybe we have the, we're hindsight looking back on what he did, but I can't imagine they wouldn't have got some of that, but they were just like, what? What's it? In fact, later on, they're like, well, there he goes, demon possessed again. I mean, who knows what he's talking about? He's a crazy man, and yet it makes perfect sense to me when you look at the analogies that are all there.
Yeah, I mean, he said, I know my sheep and my sheep know me. And they were obviously not, he later on says, you're not in my pen because you don't know me.
That's right.
I've introduced myself, but you refuse to get to know me, which I think is kind of a cool point when it comes to a relationship, having a relationship with Jesus versus going through some kind of ritualistic, religious, whatever you want to call it, which I think North America tends to go the ritualistic instead of the relationship. I mean, he's like,
no doubt,
I know my sheep and they know me, which I've always used this as an illustration, which is why I think the number one phrase in the Bible is don't be afraid. And like number 4 is fear God. Because, I've said this before on earlier podcasts, we fear God because he knows us. And it's not good. we're like, but then we're not afraid because we know God, that he's loving and compassionate and we can trust him and he's merciful. Yeah. And I think that's kind of what his point, I'm the gate, I'm the shepherd, you're the sheep, get to know me.
So that's our intro into John 10, getting into it. We'll talk about more next time. A lot of really good stuff to flesh out about this idea of sheep and shepherding. It's all over the Bible. So we'll talk about that next time on Unashamed. Thanks for listening to the Unashamed podcast. Help us out by rating us on iTunes. And don't miss an episode by subscribing on YouTube, and be sure to click that little bell to get notified about new episodes. And for even more content that you won't get anywhere else, subscribe to Blaze TV at blazetv.com/unashamed.